Vijay, let's start. So we were doing November 2018, paper two, the database part that involves normalization. So in the earlier part, the last time that we did it, we looked at all these four files that have been given here. I'm talking about these four files. We examined these files, we looked at the data which is contained in these files, and we tried to figure out as to how can we, normalize this into the third normal form. So the key things that are needed when it comes to normalizing the database are, you know, looking at the various stages of normalization one by one. So we first looked at these four tables in terms of how to normalize this into the first normal form, where we looked at uh, data being normalized to the first normal form in terms of whatever the rules or the requirements are for the database to be converted into the first normal form. Now, what are the three rules very quickly? One is that all fields should contain atomic data. Number two, there should not be any repeating groups of fields. And number three was that there must be a primary key or a key field that is used to identify every record uniquely in every table. And later on, the same field will be used in creating the relationships as well. Of course, there will be some foreign keys as well in all the tables. So if I quickly show you the CSV files once again, we had a flights table, okay, or a flights file. Of course, when we uh, import it into the database, it will get converted into a table. There was a cabin crew file, CSV file, an airports file, and there was a file named crew code. All right. With the crew code file, we figured out that we need to put in a label at the top to identify the data which is contained. So let's quickly do that again. So I'll highlight this entire data and I would shift it one cell down so that I can put in a label. So the label could be crew code, crew underscore code. That's the naming convention that we thought we would be using for all the fields. Okay. Next. Okay. So, well, when it comes to uh, giving our the field names a consistent convention or a consistent way of naming, one thing is that I can do that in the CSV files itself. I can do that here. The other option that I have is that, after having, not actually after having, but while importing these files into my database, I can change the name of the fields right then and there. Okay, so I think instead of making a change to the original file, it would be better that we set up the field names that we want to keep for all these fields while we are importing these files. All right, so that would be a better idea. Okay, moving on. The next file is the airports file that contained flight number, airport, arrival airport code, and airport name. And lastly, we have the flights file that contained flight number, departure on, departure at, arrival on, arrival at, and the crew fields. And this is the file where we decided, when we looked at it, we figured out that the flight number is not unique. The flight numbers are being repeated. So in order for assigning a primary key, or in order to assign a primary key for this table, we figured out that we could use two strategies. One strategy was to create a new field which could contain unique data values such as 1 2 3 and so on, uh, and by doing that, making all the records unique in in this particular file on in this particular table, or else it could be a case of making use of a composite key. All right, so one was that we make use of a composite key, and the other was to create a new field such as field such as maybe an ID field that can have that we can assign sort of auto numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, so that it could have sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. These could be the unique values, and this field we can probably use to identify every record uniquely. So these are the two solutions available when it comes to the flights table. Now, we were discussing it earlier as well that in case we go with the composite key solution, well, we figured out that if we combine flight number, departure on, and departure at, and we set up a composite key on these three fields, it would give uniqueness to every single record. Okay, so that is one solution, and the other is where I create a new field named ID and assign it values 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are the two solutions. But with the first one, with the composite key solution, one other problem that we were talking about was that if we go by this particular solution, one other problem that may arise would be that we'll have to later on check for partial key dependencies. And we know what is partial key dependency, that is there any non-key field, okay, which is dependent upon only part of the primary key. Now, when we say part of the primary key, in this case, we are combining three fields together to set up the primary key. And that is how it would become a composite key, including the flight number, departure on, and departure at. Now, what if there's a partial key dependency later on any of the of any of the non-key fields on part of a primary key? So we'll have to resolve that as well. So that would be an added step. All right. So probably we'll be better off if we go with the simpler solution where we don't have to set up a primary, a composite key. Instead, we create a new field which we can set up as a primary key that can have unique data values. Got it? All right. So this is what I'm going to, do. This is what we are going to keep in our mind when we, do this final solution. All right. So this is pretty much what we discussed the last time around. Now, I think we can go ahead and start importing these files one by one and give them the shape of tables in our database. And later on, let's see how we can relate these files together. By the way, in the rest of the files as well, we did figure out the primary keys to be set, such as the crew code is unique in this particular file, and this could be set as the primary key. If we talk about the airports file, we could see that the flight number here is unique. So flight number can be set up as a primary key here. If you look at the cabin crew, the payroll number was unique. So the payroll number can be set up as a primary key here. And with the last one, which was the flights file, we have already figured out what is it that we are going to do. Okay. So let's start up a database. Let's create a new database. Let me minimize all these files. So you have to start Microsoft Access. And as always, we will go with a blank database. It is important that I assign my database an appropriate name. So maybe I can, for easy identification later on, maybe I can name it November 2018 P2 solution. And before I hit the create button, it is important that I choose the directory, or I choose the folder where I would like to save this. So I'm going to select, in my case, I will select the folder where I would be saving it. You can select an appropriate folder according to the way you are storing your data. So once I have selected the folder, I'll click on create and the database gets created. We do know that whenever we create a new database, one blank table is open by default, which we need to close. It should not be kept open. And now we can start the process of importing our files. Now, before I begin to import the files, I'll first have to close them because right now they're open in Excel, so they can't be open before I can import them. So I need to close all these files one by one. So let me do that. I'll have to save the crew code file because I did make a change that I needed, which was that I had put in a label at the top, crew code. So I'll have to save it with this change because I want this label to remain. Okay, now that all the files are closed, I can start importing them. So I'll have to go to external data. I'll go to new data source from file. And as we do know that CSV files are text files, so I have to go with this option that says text file. Click on browse and select the first file that I would like to import. So let's start with importing the crew code first. Click on OK. Now you could see that the label is showing at the top. Yeah, because after having made this change, I did save my CSV file with the change. Next, okay, so it is not showing me. Let me go back. Yeah, it is a delimited file. I need to click on this. Yeah, so from here, I need to click on first row contains field name so that crew code can be separated from the rest of the data. And then I need to go to advanced. And I need to make sure that my date order is set to the DM by format. Click on OK. Next, I can skip this step. Choose my own primary key. So crew code can be set up as a primary key since it is unique. Yeah. Okay. And then I'll click on next again. And save this as crew code only. Remember, I have always told you to remove the year code from the name of the file because that is irrelevant. So just remove the N18 part and save it as, or save it with the name crew code. Close. So the crew code file gets imported. Now subsequently, I'm going to import the rest of the files as well. So going to external data, new data source again from file, text file. The next file that I'm going to import is the flights file. Let's import this, open. It's a delimited file. Next, first row contains field names. Let's go to advanced. make sure that the date order is set to DMY. This is standard practice, just make it a habit that you do this. All right. Now, this is where I need to make sure that my field names follow the same naming convention. So I'm going to change the label for the flight number to flight underscore table, sorry, flight underscore number, departure underscore on, departure underscore at, arrival underscore on, and arrival underscore at. Okay, flight number could be short text. Remember that the flight number was alphanumeric. So that is supposed to be text, or in this case, of course, it will be short text. And if you remember, departure on, departure at, arrival on, and arrival at contained dates and times. So whenever a field contains data in the form of a date or time, we need to set it up as date with time. That's the data type that we would keep. Crew again specifies the crew code, the code that identifies every crew. So that is also an alphanumeric set of data. So it could be set up as a short text. All right. So I have been consistent with the naming convention. I've done that. I have checked the data types. Now I can click on OK. Next. I can skip this particular step because by going to the advanced option, I have already, set up all the related things that I needed to set up. Next. Now, what will I do here at the last step? Where it says choose a primary key for your table. Sorry. Yes, let access add a primary key. The solution that you are thinking of, that instead of going with the composite key solution, go with the solution where we set up a new field that can contain unique data, in it, such as an auto number 1234, so that that identifies every record uniquely. So I will go with the option that says let access add a primary key, and you could see that a new ID field has been created that has unique values in it. Yeah. Next. I can name this table as flights only. I can remove the N18 part, click on finish, close. So the flights table also gets imported. Now, which is the next one? Again, going to new data source from file, text file, browse. Okay, the next table that I'm going to import is the cabin crew. Open. Okay, it's a delimited file. Next. First row contains field names. Let's go to advanced. Make sure that the date order is set to DMY. And here again, I need to, set up the field labels or the field names appropriately so that there's a consistent naming convention being followed. So remember, the first field had a very lengthy field name where it says payroll number of the employee who are air crew. Now this is not relevant. So let's shorten it up and make it more relevant. So it could be payroll underscore number only. Yeah. So that is how I can name it, payroll underscore number. Forename, surname should be kept the way it is. It is all combined. It could be considered as one word. Crew code could also be changed to crew underscore code. And same goes with the long service. Long service can also be changed to long underscore service. Okay. If we have a look at the long service data behind the scenes, have a look at this. Can you see that it contains zeros and minus one? So when a field contains 0 and minus 1, what does that mean? Exactly, very good. This should be set up as a Boolean data type, all right? Boolean data type or yes, no. So the rest of the data types are fine. Payroll number is short text, forename, surname, true code, these are all short text, but long service can be changed to yes, no. Click on OK, next. Skip this step, choose my own primary key. In this case, payroll number, since payroll number is unique in this particular file, we can set up the payroll number as the primary key. Next. Let's remove the N18 year part from the name of the file. It should be imported as cabin crew. Click on finish. Okay. Now we are done with importing 3 files successfully as tables into our database. There is one file left which before I import it, I would like to discuss one little thing about it. So first let me open up that file again in Excel, and that is the airports file. Let's open it up. Now remember one thing, we made sure that our database is normalized to the first normal form. So we looked at all the aspects. Yeah. Because we did not go with the composite key solution, so we did not have to worry about the second normal form. Because second normal form only needs to, or a database only needs to be converted into a second normal form if there's a case of a composite key, so we need to check for partial key dependencies. Is that clear? Yeah. How about the third normal form? What is the requirement for a database to be converted into third normal form? What is the rule? Okay, so you guys have not been revising, yeah? So that will waste a lot of time if we start exploring our notes again. We need to get on with it quickly. Okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you because we are running short of time. So for the database to be converted to the third normal form, the rule is that we need to look at all the tables to make sure that there is no non-key field that is fully functionally dependent upon another non-key field. So with the third normal form, primary keys and composite keys can be put to one side. They are not concerned. But what we are actually concerned with are only the non-key fields. And we need to check that there should not be any non-key field in any of the files or tables that is functionally dependent upon another non-key field. Now, keeping that in mind, if you look at the airports table, well, is airport name dependent upon the flight number? It's not. But is the airport name dependent upon the arrival airport code? Is the arrival airport code a non-key field? It is. Is airport name a non-key field? It is. So, what we ideally need to do is we need to split this table into two. And remember that if we do find this in one of the tables or more than one of the tables, if we do find that there are non-key dependencies, then the rule is to pick up the non-key field that that has, or actually the non-key fields that have their dependency on another non-key field. We take those fields out and make them into a separate table, or we put them into a separate table. So what we need to do here is we need to take out the arrival airport code and the airport name and make a new file or make a new table out of it, and the flight number, actually the airport's table would remain. So how would we basically do that? For doing that, what we'll have to do is we'll have to first remove the duplicates from here. We'll first have to remove the duplicates from here, because when we remember, when we shift the arrival airport code and the airport name to a new table, there it should be unique. There the airport arrival airport code should be unique. Are you getting what I'm saying? So what I'll do is I'll just quickly do it so that you can understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to select these, all these, copy them, open up a new file, a new spreadsheet, and I'll paste them here. Yeah. So I have a new file that contains these two fields. Now I need to make these unique here. Are you getting it? Right? So how will I make these unique? Well, I can select all this data. What do you think will I do to do this? To make this unique? I'll just have to remove the duplicates. I'll have to remove the duplicates to make this unique. Isn't that right? Yeah. So after having selected it, I'll go to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, or instead of doing this, I can go to data and yeah, have a look at this. Remove duplicates. I'll click on this, and I want to remove the duplicates from these two columns, column A and column B. Click on OK. 28 duplicate values found and removed, 11 unique values remain. Do you get this? I'll click on OK. And now you could see that the arrival airport codes are unique, as well as the airport name that these arrival airport codes represent. Those airport names have also been, you know, they're also unique now. So I can save this particular file as a new file. So I can go to File, Save. I'll save it in the folder where I have the rest of the files. So I'm going to go to Browse and IT past papers. So, well, I can name this arrival airport codes. Arrival airport codes. And I would rather save it as a CSV file instead of saving it as a spreadsheet file. So it has been saved as a new file named arrival airport codes as a CSV file. Let's close this. Any change that I would have to make to this particular file, the airports file, well, The only change that I'll need to make here is that I'll have to remove the airport name from here. I do not need the airport name again. I have the airport names mentioned in the arrival airport codes file. All right. So I'll select this column and I will delete this column. So that now I'm only left with the flight number and the arrival airport code. Ji beta, are you following this? Yeah. Okay, but since I have made this change to the CSV file, I need to make sure that I save it again before I close it. So I will have to save it so that it is saved with the changes that I've just made. Let's close it. Okay, now I'm going to import two more files. And which are those two files? I'm going to import, let me close. I'm going to import, we'll go to new data source from file, text file, browse, and let's import the arrival airport codes file. Open. It's a delimited file. Next, first row contains field names. Advanced. Change the date order to DMY. And uh, well, arrival airport code can be renamed to arrival underscore airport underscore code. I think I'll have to keep it this long so that it makes sense. If arrival code or arrival airport would not really make sense, arrival airport code would make better sense, and arrival, sorry, airport name, airport underscore name. So I put an underscores. Okay. Next, we can skip this step. Next, choose my own primary key, and you see that now it mentions arrival airport code as a primary key to be set in this particular table. Next, I can save it with this particular name, arrival airport codes. Click on finish. And the fourth table gets imported. Now I'm only left with the fifth table to be imported. Let's go to new data source again from file. Browse the airport CSV, open. Okay. So this has two fields in it. Next, first row contains field names. Advanced, date order to DMY. Change the field name to flight underscore number and arrival underscore airport underscore code. Okay. Next, skip this step, choose my own primary key. Since the flight number was unique in this particular table, so flight number can be set as the primary key. Next, save it with the name airports, click on finish. And the fifth table also gets imported. All right, let's quickly now move on to creating the relationships. So I'm going to go to database tools, relationships. Select all these tables, add selected tables. The tables get added. Let's rearrange these in some way. For example, okay, so crew code can come in here, and cabin crew. Now these will be linked together. I'll put in the flights table on one side, the crew code, the cabin crew. Let me close this so that I have more space to look at all the tables. Okay, and airports can come here, arrival airport codes. Okay, let me move this down a bit. All right, so, well, so crew code can be joined in the relationship with crew in the flights table. It will be a one-to-many relationship. Create. Crew code will also be joined with the cabin crew on the basis of the crew code, which will be the foreign key here. It's again a one-to-many relationship. Okay, the flight number with this, because the flight numbers are being repeated again, this is a one-to-many relationship. And the arrival airport code with the arrival airport code, the arrival airport code in the arrival airport codes table with the arrival airport code field in the airports table. Again, another one-to-many relationship. So all these relationships will be of a one-to-many type between all these tables. So this is the way you link them up together. All right. Uh, is this understood? How the relationships have been created and how these fields have been now linked up? Particularly these two, the ones that we had split at the end, because there was converting the database into the third normal form required this split to be made. Yeah. And did you understand the removal of the duplicates part? Because we had to create the airports table where we could identify actually the arrival airport codes, where we could identify every airport code uniquely with its unique airport name. All right. So this is how we would normalize, or we would have normalized this database to the third normal form. So initially we did it all kind of manually by looking at the data, trying to figure out how the data is, taking it through the various stages of normalization. Once we were sure about what kind of structure we wanted to give to our tables, we could of course proceed with importing those files as tables and then finally creating the relationships between them. So is it clear? Okay, very good.